Hello and welcome. My name is Amanda Popila and I'm a researcher in human capital at the Conference Board. I will be your moderator and host on today's webcast, Starr Insurance Companies is Leading the Way with Student Loan Benefits. Before I introduce our topic and speakers for today, I just want to remind you that CEU credits are available for those who attend this show live. If you're interested in earning those credits, please just type your name, email address, and the type of credit you need in that box at the bottom of your screen. And if you are looking for CPE credits, please check the 3 pop-up boxes that will appear throughout the program. So today we're going to share with you a little bit about student loan benefits programs. So what they are, how you can establish the need for such a program, how to get an approval internally, and then launching and ongoing program management. And our speakers today, I'm joined by 2 speakers today. The first is Linda Festa, who is a certified benefits professional and the current benefits director of Starr Insurance Companies. She has over 30 years of experience in employee benefit strategy, plan design, administration, and compliance. Linda specializes in creating and implementing a total benefits philosophy to increase employee awareness and appreciation of benefits. So Linda, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Amanda. I'm very happy to be here and share our story with everyone.
Great, thank you. And our other speaker today is Kate Hoblitz. She's the Senior Manager for Common Bond's Partnership Success Team and focuses on ensuring the effectiveness of strategic and enterprise partnerships. Kate has a bachelor's degree from the University of Pennsylvania and is passionate about financial wellness and helping people achieve long-term stability, even when struggling with the burden of student loan debt. So Kate, I'm going to hand it over to you to kick us off today.
Thank you so much, Amanda, and thank you so much for having us. Really excited to talk to all of you today. As Amanda said, just to echo it, I am really passionate about financial wellness, and I have really enjoyed working with Linda to launch this program for her employees. So I'll pass it over to Linda to kind of talk through the beginning of this process, but really where we began thinking was, how do you establish the need for a program like this? Student loan benefits is definitely a hot topic, and how do you make it kind of personal to your employee base and really establish that need?
Thank you, Kate. So for Starr, first let me put a few things in context. One, some of the things I say will be my opinion. So my opinion is my opinion, not Starr's opinion. And some things are actual facts, and so those are here for you to see. And the other piece is that Starr started this program back in 2019. And so we were in a very different place than we are today. There was extremely low unemployment. Employees were leaving for a $5,000 salary difference. And so Starr was tasked with doing a deeper dive into employee turnover. And that was where we started to look at what was happening in our organization on a much deeper level. And we found that most of those who were leaving had less than 2 years of service, so they weren't staying. And most of them were under 35. A good half of them were under age 35. We also found when we did this work that the cost of turnover was very high, higher than most anyone expected it to be. And we used a cost turnover tool in order to make that determination. So we definitely put the numbers in place so that we understood what that cost was. And at the outcome, it was a sense of how do we best retain our key talent. What is going to make Starr stand out from the crowd and our competitors? Within that conversation, we knew that student loan debt had been in the news. When you hit $1.5 trillion worth of student loan debt, that is news. And so we were well aware of it. And these numbers were climbing to things that people had not seen before, and just out of control. And we found that there was a very small number of employers who were out there actually helping their employees with that cash, not just that education, but with a cash benefit to help employees meet those needs. And none of those at the time were any of Starr's competitors. So that was where we started as a place of this is a good thing that will make a difference for Starr.
Thank you. So we're going to kick off with a polling question. And we want to see, where is the audience on this topic? So do you know the exact number of your employees that have student loan debt, and also the amount of debt that they're holding? So it's a two-part question. Do you know both things? Okay, we'll give it a couple more seconds, but it looks like the resounding answer to this question is no. So we've only got about 9% now, 6 or 9% of respondents that say they do know both of these things. 94% are saying no, they don't know. So I think from our conversations before this webcast, it sounds like that's pretty common, but most companies don't know. And so, Kate, can you share a little bit more about how this works?
Yeah, so like you mentioned, this reflects really what we've seen and what we understand is that, like Linda said, student debt is something really in the news. People understand that there's a need, but there's often this challenge that companies don't understand what type of debt their employees are actually holding. So they know student debt's a problem, but they don't know the real numbers about their employee population. And of course, across industries, we can see different types of student debt profiles among employees. And so not only is there a need to understand your industry more specifically, but also your actual employees to start to think about how you could actually build a program or a student loan benefit program that would assist them. So this is where Common Bond's organizational assessment comes in. So this is an in-depth report that provides data on the amount of student debt within a company and its impact on their employees. So when most employers are thinking about how they could implement a student loan benefit or what that benefit would even look like, this is one of the first challenges that they really run up against is how much debt do their employees actually have? And what we've done is been able to build this process where we can provide these reports and really become experts on your actual employees. There's national averages we can look at, there's aggregate data about certain industries, but it really doesn't paint nearly a clear enough picture as actually seeing what type of debt your employees are holding, and then you can really understand the impact that student debt is actually having on them.
Okay, so this next polling question is a little bit of a trivia question. So do you know what percent of the national student loan debt balance is held by people over the age of 40? We're going to give everyone a few minutes to respond to this one. We're seeing some responses come in, and it's a little bit mixed. So fewer, about 15-20% say it's 15%. But the majority are tied between 23 and 36%. So we have, what's the right answer?
So the correct answer is 36%. And I think that these results are really important from two perspectives. One is to see what the distribution is, that people are kind of unclear about this number in general. We really think about millennials often when we talk about student debt, but the reality is that it's impacting people across all age bands. And so I think our results from this poll show that people think it could be all across the board, and that it's probably lower than 36%. And in fact, it is actually a third of all student loan debt that is being held by those older individuals over the age of 40.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that is a common misconception. And I know when we were talking about this before, I also shared that I'm a recent grad, so this is a topic that is very near and dear to my heart, and was surprised to hear that over a third of the debt is held by people over 40. All right, so I think we can go back to the presentation.
So this is just a graph demonstrating kind of that data we were just talking about, and specifically how these different age bands have grown over the past couple of years. So student debt is something that has really just changed a lot in the last 30 years. It's tripled in under that time. And in that process, it's kind of unclear where it's being distributed necessarily. We talk a lot about millennials. We talk a lot about recent grads and the debt that they're struggling with. And it is really important to keep those groups in mind and keep those populations in mind. But actually, this is really something that's across all age bands. As Linda will talk more about, when we actually did this organizational assessment with Starr Insurance, one of the things that you often will see is that those individuals over the age of 40, 50, or 60 who have student debt often have a much higher average loan balance as well. This is because they are perhaps paying for multiple children to go to school, also because they may have gone back to school to get an advanced degree later on in their career. Graduate degree loans tend to result in a higher average loan balance, of course, just more loans, more balance, but they also tend to have higher rates. Graduate degree loans have higher interest rates than undergraduate degree loans. So just helpful to keep an open mind about student debt. I always say kind of think about it from the whole household perspective, and that this just isn't just impacting recent grads. So the way that the organizational assessment works is that it is a way to pull data on your employees and the student debt that they are having or holding, and then present that back to you in a way that then can help you build a program around. So there's no employee approval required. It's anonymized, aggregated data, so there's no approval required, and they're not aware that this is occurring. Additionally, there is no credit check performed. It's similar to the mechanism used for proof of employment or check of employment. So it does not constitute a credit check, and therefore there's no impact to any credit. Again, the employees will not be aware that anything has happened or that you have pulled any of this data. There's also no personally identifiable information being shared back to you. So you won't receive any PII on your employees. I always say that with these organizational assessments, there's definitely sort of ears prick up from a legal red flags perspective, but we really have crossed all our T's and dotted all our I's to make sure that this is something that everybody can feel really comfortable about, because it is so important to get this data, because it's really impactful to understand what your employee's student debt situation actually looks like. So that's kind of the how of how we do this organizational assessment. And then what are the goals? So kind of what's the outcome of this assessment? So the first is the ability to identify how much in student debt is owed by your employees. So just get you the hard numbers. It allows you to kind of stay math forward throughout this entire process by starting with that real hard data. If you only have access to industry data or national averages, you're going to be operating from a range from point A going forward. But by starting with really true and hard data, you can just stay math forward throughout this process. So with that math, you can then showcase how much in savings Common Bond would be able to provide your employees. So one of the really impactful things about a student loan contribution program is that the amount that the employer is contributing to the student loan debt of the employee is on top of the monthly payment that they are making, which means that that money that you are contributing is effectively going directly to the principal of their loan. So it's really having an impact at cutting down that debt. So it's not just supporting them as they pay back these loans that they took out to get the education, to get the job in the first place. It has a really direct impact in cutting down that principal on the loan that they're holding. And those savings have a real emotional attachment to them. Often people might say, well, what's the difference between giving someone $100 a month just in addition to their salary versus $100 towards their student loans? And when you see what the pay down impact is when that $100 is going straight towards their loans every month on top of their monthly payment, it really shows the impact of this type of program. And then lastly, it allows you to identify how much the program would actually cost your organization to roll out this employer contribution program. This is so important in just the internal approval part of the process because, again, if you start with national averages and then you go to your team with these ranges, these programs, if you are contributing monthly to all of your employees, can have high dollar amounts attached to them. And the more that you can be certain about what that amount is, of course, the better. So again, it just allows you to really have data drive the process throughout thinking about your program. And I think one of the other important call-outs about the organizational assessment is that Linder, the way that Starr insurance companies thought about the student loan contribution program is they had a goal in mind. They wanted to address retention issues. And when you have a goal and then you match that up with this data about your employee population, you can really show how you can achieve that goal. It's a student loan contribution is a really customizable benefit. It's not an ERISA compliant benefit, which means that you can adjust your program based off of what your specific goals are for your employee population. So I think particularly when you combine having that goal with then the hard data behind what the student debt population looks like, it really allows you to carry that program through the approval process and paint a really clear picture for why it's so important. So now I will pass it back to Linder to talk more about her process of gaining approval internally for this program.
Thank you. As Kate mentioned, we had a focus. We did want to reduce employee turnover. We wanted to increase loyalty and retention. And we liked the idea very much of providing that first in the industry benefit. So that was also a plus for Starr, knowing that we would be the first of our competitors to offer a cash benefit to help employees pay down that student loan debt. And when we assessed the cost of turnover, part of what came out of that in this great sum of money is just a 1% reduction in turnover would save the company over $500,000. So immediately you have a budget and I have a goal. I can reduce retention, I can reduce turnover, I can take that $500,000 and put it somewhere else, move it to good use. And within that research, we also found that 86% of employees said that they would commit to a company for 5 years if the employer helped them pay back their student loans. And so for Starr, loyalty as a rule is rewarded well. And we do that in some of our other benefits. Starr has a defined benefit plan still for our staff. So we have a real pension plan, a very old school. That 5 years is the vesting. So the goal is, can I get you to stay for 5 years? And if I can, then you'll stay longer because now you have this vested pension. So how do we connect what we have in place today to something new to help with that turnover and grab the employees who were leaving before they were vested, right? So the staff walking out less than 2 years of service, they were younger employees. So those are the ones we really wanted to target, and yet we found some other things when we did this analysis. How many companies were providing cash? Less than 4%, and that was 4% of employers across the board, not just in the insurance industry. So when we hit that insurance industry specific, we're getting into a very small number, and then insurance and then competitors down to 0. So that was how we did it. We wanted to funnel this. We wanted to understand what the impact would be. And we knew that by implementing this benefit, by being the first one to go out and say, Starr's going to help you pay back your student loans, that you went to school, you wanted to get a great job, here's a great company. Let us help you and you help us at the same time and grow and keep that top talent. And that was really what we were looking to do. And that was our focus, and we had some numbers to put behind it. So let's go forward. So how did we get approval? Everyone has a different approval process. In Starr, we have a leadership committee and a benefits committee, and that is where we needed to go. And so I would say for anyone, if you're looking to do this, do your homework. And that is so important. And understanding what is it your committee wants. Always state the facts and make the numbers matter. And we were able to do that because we had that turnover data. We knew that if we could keep employees and just reduce turnover 1%, we were going to take that $500,000 savings. That's what we were looking for. And that's where we talk about drilling it down, where Kate said, don't come into a meeting and give industry specifics because that's not what your committee, that's not what they want to hear. They want to make it about your staff. How many graduates do we have with debt? What is that median debt? And our big aha, there was a couple of them in that organizational assessment. The first is the percentage of our employees that had debt. So it was 26%. That's a pretty high number in an organization that is not tremendous. So throw that out exponentially. If your debt is, again, on that average, how many of your employees are we talking about? And then what was the debt? Starr found out we were above the industry average. Industry average for insurance, $39,000. Starr's average, $44,000 in debt. More important than that was who held that debt. And this goes to looking at that polling question. 36% of debt is held by employees over 60. And Starr was no exception at all. Our employees over 60 years old held more than $67,000 in student loan debt. And that's because a lot of this was multiple loans. They had Parent Plus loans. So they were taking out these loans on behalf of their children, and yet they're the ones who were being held in debt. And a lot of times that delays retirement for people. It delays their ability to save. So how do you make that impact? And that was what we were looking for. So we wanted to make it personal. We wanted to have Starr look at the impact to our own staff and who we needed to help here. And what we found was it was all of the ages within Starr. It was all of the different tenure within Starr. And we also found that our female population held a higher debt amount than our male population. So all of this is out of that assessment tool. It is not specific to any employee, but you can drill it into what you want to show. We showed age, we showed tenure, we showed gender, we show location, we show department, and that was important because it gave our committee a much more focused look at the staff they were bringing in. And state what your goals are. What did you want to do? What is the purpose of this program? And for Starr, it was to attract the top talent. And that was when you're going out and you're doing those campus visits, you want to be able to say you have a benefit nobody else does. Improve retention. Keep the staff that you have because you worked hard to get them on board. Reduce turnover. Same concept, but two different levers that you can pull on that retention and turnover. And of course, improve the morale and the loyalty, and rolling out a benefit that says, I am really going to help you where it counts in your pocketbook. That is a huge boost to employee morale. And always, when you walk into a leadership meeting, I'm sure you all know this, provide more than one option for them to consider. They don't want to feel like you're pushing something down on them. So give them a choice, but make sure you can live with both of those choices. Because if they choose the one you weren't pushing for, you've got to still be satisfied with it. And again, do the math. That was so important. When we were looking for budget, how are we going to get to convince them that we needed to do this? How are we convincing them to spend more money? The first was we knew what we had in that cost of turnover. But the other piece we looked at is how much we stopped spending in tuition reimbursement over the years. And the reason is your employees are walking in the door with those degrees right now. So here, look at that. Look at it past 5 years. How much have you stopped spending? And if your organization is like a lot of the ones that I've worked for, once you don't spend your budget dollars, you lose those budget dollars. So if you had tuition reimbursement money, your staff wasn't using it, the next time budget time came around, you aren't getting as much tuition reimbursement to spend the next year. So understand what is being lost in that spend, as well as saying, where else can I make a difference? What else can I do? And that's that potential savings in the cost of turnover. Those numbers, add them up, put them together, and see what the picture shows you. So we can go to the next one.
We actually have a question, Linda, about how would you compare student loan benefits with education reimbursement programs, which I feel like might be kind of timely because of the note you just made about the reduction in spend in tuition reimbursement. Do you have any thoughts there on how you would compare student loan contribution versus tuition reimbursement?
So for Starr, and I could only speak to Starr, most of those who walk in the door are coming in with a degree. We do have internal education programs, and again, within our industry, our employees are taking courses which are paid for by the organization. So those are not considered educational assistance. They're not considered tuition reimbursement. Again, they're not going to an outside school. They're getting this education through affiliated services that Starr has with educational organizations specific to the insurance industry. So we knew that that was a budget we weren't going to touch. It's in place. It is a flat dollar amount. So it was irrespective of what we're spending to teach employees underwriting, risk management. Those programs are built into our budget, and we have relationships that manage those. We did not have as many employees going back and saying, I need to get a bachelor's degree or I want to get a master's degree. They focus on the industry itself. And that's why for Starr, we had two different levers that we knew we could pull. That tuition reimbursement was for the outside education, and that's the one we wanted to pull on. The other was a set number, and we didn't want to touch that. We knew that was important to the organization. That's how our employees gain those certifications and advance throughout the organization, and that's important to Starr as well. Again, leading to that loyalty, we're going to educate you so you can grow within Starr itself.
Yeah, I think that's a great point that you make, Linda, around, tuition reimbursement and education assistance can be two different things. There can be, I want to go get an advanced degree versus internal education programs that you use to educate your employees. And I know what we've seen at Common Bond is that classic tuition reimbursement really helped a different generation of the workforce, where often people would start working before they have their degrees. But the fact is that now most jobs require you to have that degree when you walk in the door. And so a lot of employers across really all industries have seen a big drop in their employees taking advantage of tuition reimbursement programs because so many needed to walk in the door with that degree to get the job in the first place. And so figuring out how to repurpose those funds is actually how these conversations often start about student loan benefits, because student loan benefits are solving more of the problems of the current workforce generation, where tuition reimbursement was of a different type of generation. This is now focused more on those employees who've taken out those loans to get the degree, to get the job in the first place. Student debt has really exploded in the last 30 years. It's tripled in 30 years. The cost of a degree has gone up over 1,100% in that time. And so going to school is just a completely different thing than it was when tuition reimbursement was created and when it gained popularity. So I think that seeing the underutilization of tuition reimbursement is actually often how these conversations start, and a great call out by Linda that if you don't use that budget, often it somehow doesn't show up next year.
Yeah, and Kate, this might be a good time to come back to an earlier question as well. Are there specific industries or majors, degrees that this is most common in, or is it kind of across the board? So
there are definitely industries where we see spikes in student debt. They're going to be based off of what type of degrees are required to have those jobs in the first place. So, of course, when an undergraduate degree is required, the average undergrad who's currently leaving school has $32,000 in debt. So that's going to definitely cover a certain population. As you go up in degree level, the amount of debt increases exponentially. So it's not an even slope. It is very exponential. Going up with degrees such as lawyers, doctors, pharmacists, dentists actually have the highest average loan balance across all types of employment. They carry about $300,000 in debt on average. So it definitely, there is data about different industries that is helpful in pointing in a direction with these types of programs, knowing that there is an underlying need. But I think what Linda and what Starr Insurance Companies found is that there's industry level data, and then there's the details about your employees. And knowing that, for example, at Starr, they had these older employees with much higher average loan balances, so clearly really feeling the burden of that debt and definitely holding them back for retirement, painted a more colorful picture or just a more complete picture of what their employee debt looked like. So there's definitely information about industries and majors related to student debt, but I do think that how those actually apply to your employee population can have more layers to it based off of where you might be located and what types of employees you might have as well.
And I will say, Amanda, one of the things that's showing location and within internally departments that had the student loan debt, the members of that benefits committee wanted to help. When they looked at their own group, they're like, wow, my own group, my team, they really have a lot of debt. I didn't know that. Or I'm responsible for this office location and they're hurting. I need to help them out, right? So that's the making it personal. They have a connection to their staff. Put something in front of them so they can help them, right? Give them that focus. And that also helped us to make a difference. And then when we talk about using this projected savings, again, understand your numbers in termination. And I realize that this is a different point we are today, and so you may not have a lot of employees leaving your organization. But if you were to still look at that as a general perspective, it gives you a sense of your population. Who are you losing? How much service do they have? What's the age? What's the reason? And then, of course, what is the cost every time you have to replace your staff? And I'm sure the cost to replace staff today is probably not any less than it was a year ago. And again, that's the piece. Where can I find my budget? We knew what it was with Starr, and this is the tool that we used. It was a CEB turnover cost calculator, because I know people, I'm always like, well, how did you figure that out? Well, we used a tool that was out there, and we put our information in it, and it was a very conservative approach that we took. So again, coming back and looking at what that turnover was and looking at the cost is very sobering. And your senior leaders may not know what that number is, and they may not know because you probably don't want to show them. This is a time where you would want to show them, because you can tell them, well, I'm going to help you save some of this lost revenue, some of this lost money. We just need to put it in a different place, right? You don't want to just come out and say, oh, we're losing a couple of $1 million a year every time somebody walks out the door, and they're going to turn around and tell you you have to do something about it. This is the do something about it. This is a way forward to reduce that. And so that other piece, as I said, that tuition reimbursement, it went down over the years. We knew our new hires were coming in with those advanced degrees. So again, look around you. Turn around to your HR partners. You may not own every program that you can utilize funds from. So is it in learning and development? Does the fund sit with your generalist organization? Who has budgets that hasn't been used? What impact does that have? And then use a reasonable percentage to determine that budget as a starting point, which is why we said 1% of the cost of turnover. We were not looking to get some big number that we couldn't achieve. We wanted to make it a very achievable goal, and we thought that we could do that. And then estimate the numbers. How many employees, because you're going to know how many employees have debt if you do that organizational assessment. So if 20% of those employees sign up, if 10% sign up, what is the cost going to be? And yes, give them that aha number, that if 100% of the employees sign up for this benefit, this is the big dollar. That's what it is. And when you're designing it and you're talking about savings, you need to put a cap on the benefit. And so Starr did that. And we said we're going to give you up to a maximum of $10,000 over the course of 5 years. And so we put dollars, we put years of service. And in some ways we work with both. And we work with both because there may not be times when somebody is making a payment. They may be out on leave. There may be another reason why that payment doesn't continue. So we look at the $10,000 as the cap. We estimate the 5 years. If someone stayed fully in the program all the way through, they're going to get $10,000 over 5 years. And you want to put that cap on it because you have other people coming in behind the ones that are already in there. So you want to allow for that turnover, finish with some employees, bring in more, and leave yourself some flexibility as well. And we do that in that when our senior leadership was looking at this, they were well aware of what the cost of student loan debt was. It's so much in the news, and we are located in New York City, so one of the things that was a little bit surprising to them was the amount of student loan debt for those coming out of city and state colleges, where it's supposed to be a lot less costly than a private college. So looking at that, they're saying these people are still coming out with $30,000 in debt. And that's the lower end as opposed to those who are in more private colleges, and you get into that higher and higher cost. So they're aware of it. They said, wow, $10,000, are we really going to be able to help anybody? And again, that organizational assessment put some numbers in there when we come up with that plan design. That $10,000 is worth X amount. It's actually worth more than $10,000 by the time somebody's loan gets shortened at the tail end, because you're bringing down the number of years that somebody is going to have to pay back that loan debt, because they're getting a boost every time you're putting in money. And as Kate said, you're drawing down their principal. So that's very helpful too when you're doing in that piece of how can I help as many of my employees as possible. That was our goal. So let's go unless we have some questions.
Yeah, we did get a few questions here. So the first being, so you were able to calculate if 100% of our employees that are eligible use this is how much we would spend, and if 80% used it, so you could calculate that. Did you have any external benchmarks to use? And I know you were one of the first in your industry, or there weren't many that did this, but did you come across any external benchmarks, or did you look at what competitors were doing?
Part of that information came from Common Bond, so I'll let Kate take this because they had that information for us.
Yeah, so I'd say just as a sort of a blanket statement, benchmark data on how people are using student loan benefits, there's not a ton of data yet because there's not a ton of employees doing this. More and more are starting to roll out these types of programs. They tend to be highly customized and tailored to their employee population. There are certain things we know. One, for example, is that the average amount that is contributed by the employer is typically between about $100 and $150 per month. We do see many programs employers offer tiered programs where it increases per year, or have a waiting period before you actually enroll. So there are some more factors to consider there, but that average amount is something that we know a little bit more about. Another thing I'll say about student loan benefits is that there's a range of different options that employers offer, ranging from cost-free to actual contribution programs, and the impact is on that scale as well. So cost-free partnerships are often around employers trying to assist their employees to learn more about student loan refinancing, which is a way to try to adjust their rate to reflect their current financial standing and hopefully save them money on their loans. But it's not necessarily the right option for everybody. So then the next step is providing guidance. Common Bond, for example, we offer an evaluation tool that helps employees understand what the appropriate repayment strategy is for their loans based on their financial goals. So kind of like a diagnostic on their repayment plan to make sure that they have the correct monthly payment, that if they're trying to save money on their monthly payment, that they're able to. If they're trying to save, trying to get a better interest rate, that they're able to. It's really trying to help them achieve their goals. And that is a paid software tool that's then made available to the employees. And then, of course, on the extreme end, or the most impactful end, are student loan contribution programs, which will have the highest dollar amount. So there is a scale in terms of what employers do. And I'd say with each of those steps, they're gaining in popularity. And I think that the more and more employers that offer student loan contribution, I think the more employees are going to begin to expect it and think that, if you have an employer who really cares about their employees and really appreciates this education that they made sure that they got to be able to get this job, they're going to want to contribute to that student loan debt and really help the employee through that process.
Yeah, thank you. And I know you mentioned a little bit about this earlier when we were talking about the difference between the tuition reimbursement and the student loan benefits. So it sounds like you would offer both, and it's a different population, right? The same employee would not get both. Is that correct?
Actually, we don't prohibit our employees from collecting both.
Okay.
If an employee comes to us and they have student loan debt, they're eligible to participate in the program. So the budget is actually separate. We just don't see a lot of usage for tuition reimbursement, again, because most of our employees are using our internal education systems for the courses that are offered directly through Starr. So it hits their budget a little bit, but it doesn't cost the employee any money. And I did see a question, somebody asked, is there a waiting period? And so our waiting period is 3 months. So we want you to be an employee for 3 months before you become eligible. And the reason for that, and I know it's not on this slide, but I'll give everyone brief information, is Starr's program, we identify the program as a student loan match repayment program. And I use the term match because we want our employees to pay their own debt at the same time. So Starr's employees have to be contributing to their own debt in order to get Starr to make that secondary contribution. And you have to have 3 months. We want to see that you've been paying your student loan every month. And so we say, come to us with 3 months of proof that you've paid the loan, and then you can get into the Starr program. Again, that's that 3-month waiting period. So as they walk and become a brand new employee, they're going to be told about the program. We're going to say, you can join us in 3 months. And by the way, you're going to want to start paying down your student loan debt right away because you need to have 3 months worth of payments in place in order to be eligible for Starr's contributions. And so we look at that in a rolling 3 months. So you've qualified. We're going to give you 3 months. Each month we make a contribution. And then we're going to come back each quarter and verify that you're still doing that. And that program is working very well for Starr. Our employees are giving us that documentation, and so they're very happy to say, yes, I'm paying my loan down. And we set a minimum. The only thing you have to pay a minimum of $100 a month towards your student loan debt. The average monthly payment is about, for Starr, $350. So we didn't put a very high threshold for eligibility because we wanted to be as inclusive as possible. And for that reason, that inclusiveness, it is not just student loans for the employee in their own name, but we did include the Parent Plus loans. And the reason was that very high debt for our staff who was over 60 years old. So we included them and made it, again, as inclusive as possible. So Parent Plus loans when it was taking out on behalf of your children, or your own student loan debt that was in your name. So that's some of what we do. And Starr also offers the other programs that Kate mentioned because we have the opportunity for employees to get advice on how to manage their current debt, as well as the refinancing option that Common Bond offers. So we wanted to make the program as broad and as full as possible and to hit the most of our employees that we could, and that's why we opened it up to student loans and the Parent Plus loans.
And you mentioned the refinancing. We did get one more question for Kate. And do you see companies requiring refinancing as part of the cash payment plan?
Yeah, so it's a great question. The short answer is no, that refinancing would definitely not be a requirement to be able to be part of one of these cash payment plans. Really because refinancing is not right for everybody. Refinancing is right for certain people and certain types of loans, but other people are better off taking advantage of federal programs for their federal loans, so we would definitely not require it. But there are cases where an employee, because of a program like the one that Starr offers, they use the guidance tool to learn about refinancing. They then get a better rate on their loan, saving them money right off the bat, and then they're already participating in the student loan contribution program. So the layering of all of those different benefits can have a lot of impact on their student debt. So I think that kind of segues us nicely into this program management. Linda's given some highlights of kind of what the program already looks like, but I'll let her talk through what launching was like. This is where she and I got to work together a lot, and then also what management's been like going forward.
Thank you. So make a big deal out of it. It really is a big deal. You are going to make your employees beyond happy. It's probably one of the best things I think that Starr has done. And we announced it when employees are paying attention. So even though it's a great benefit, you want to make sure employees are focused and paying attention. So we did it prior to annual open enrollment. Anyone who does employee benefits knows that that's the one time you have employees, you know, oh, what are my benefits? I need to remember to do this. So right before the open enrollment period, that's when we made this announcement. And so we did it. We said, you know, the end of September, by the way, employees, in addition to open enrollment, we want you to know this is coming. Look for this, but not until after you complete your open enrollment. So don't compete with yourself, but get there, make sure they're paying attention to you when you do make that announcement. Make the big splash, put it on Twitter, put it on LinkedIn, put it on your company intranet and on your careers page, because the people who are coming to look to see, maybe I should go work for Starr, that's a selling point. So be sure and put it there as well, and be ready for questions. Lots and lots of questions, because they will come in, including things like, well, I took out a home equity loan to pay for my children's education. Will you cover that? And so the answer is no, I'm sorry, we will not. But thank you for asking. And work with your internal partners up front. So work with your legal team, your finance team, your payroll team, your communications team. Partner with them, because they are going to help you figure out the things that you haven't thought of. Make sure your plan is legally compliant. If you're putting a document together, make sure your communications people have read it. You don't want typos. You don't want to misstate anything. For payroll, bring them in, because prior to the CARES Act going into place, student loan repayments were taxable to employees. And by the way, Starr is paying the imputed income for that benefit. And so pre-CARES, everyone, the student loan repayment was taxable to them. Post-CARES, Parent Plus loans are still taxable to the employee. So Starr is paying for that imputed income because we felt it is much more meaningful. We want to make sure that they're getting the benefit of that full contribution every year. And then with your finance team, you want to make sure that they understand this additional cost is coming into the company. Where are we going to book it? What does it mean? Are there, you know, what are the tax obligations? What are the filing obligations? So get good partners as you launch this benefit. And it was very successful. Our employees were very, very happy to see this. We have about 25%, believe it or not, only 25% of our eligibles have signed up so far. So we do remind them that it is there, and they talk to each other. So it grows every month, a little slower now because everybody is working remotely. But that initial splash, a lot of good sign up, and so that's the most important piece in your partnership. So.
So now to kind of talk about the CARES Act. I know Linda alluded to that, and it does play into, you know, how these programs operate during normal times, and also specifically how they operate right now. So the CARES Act introduced 3 measures to assist student loan borrowers and their employers. So the first is the federal student loan interest waiver and the federal student loan payment waiver. So really what this means is that there is no interest and no payments due for federally backed federal student loans through September 30th, 2020. So there is the ability for people to leverage their monthly payments towards other parts of their financial life. It made them think about their student loans, too, in a really impactful way, which I think is a great thing. It reminds them that how much they actually are paying. Many people have their loans in sort of an auto pay or a set it and forget it type of payment. So it's brought it to their attention and really reminded them about these student loan payments. Then the part that impacts student loan contribution is the tax-free student loan repayment program. So what happened under the CARES Act is that Section 127, which is the part of the tax code that makes tuition reimbursement tax advantaged, now has been expanded to include student loan contribution. So that means that through the end of the year, any contributions made by employers to employees' student loans that they took out for their own education are tax advantaged. They're tax-free. So this is an exciting thing. It is only through September 30th, or sorry, the end of the year as of now. That is how tuition reimbursement started as well. It was a short-term program that was an extended year after year because of popularity, and then eventually made part of the permanent tax code. So we hope to see this continue, and there is precedent for that. But it does mean that there are some new requirements for student loan contributions to qualify for the CARES Act. One thing to note is that you don't need to necessarily decide to have the tax advantage status. It is something that employers can make that decision on. If they're, basically what I mean is that if your contribution program doesn't comply with some of these requirements, that's fine. You just won't be able to get that tax advantage status. So it's still not an ERISA compliant benefit, which is very different. This is just around tax advantaged. So an overview of some of those requirements is that there does need to be a formal plan document. Specifically, if you already have a Section 127 plan document for your tuition reimbursement program, it can just be included in that plan document. Your employees need to be notified of the program. As Linda mentioned, I hope you've already, if you have one of these programs, you're already shouting it from the mountaintops because people are very excited about it. So I would hope that they already are aware, but it is one of the requirements. And then there is some non-discrimination testing. The non-discrimination testing is just to make sure that highly compensated employees aren't unfairly advantaged in this program. It also only has to do with eligibility, not participation. So it's really about your plan design, not about your employee population and participation. So for example, with Starr Insurance Company's program, because it's available to all employees, they automatically qualify or meet the bar for non-discrimination testing. And now, Linda, if you want to talk through some of the kind of further details that we've uncovered as we were working together to understanding of what this meant for Starr Insurance Companies and how to help you guys implement this new tax advantage status.
Yes, thank you. So with Starr, we had planned on doing imputed income, getting a file back so we knew every employee who got Starr's contribution, and Starr's contribution is $125 per month. So that was going to be brought back into the payroll system, which is why you need your payroll partners, added as income on a pay stub, and then on a monthly basis, Starr would gross that up and the imputed income is calculated so that Starr is paying the taxes for that $125 income on the pay on a regular basis. So the employee's not getting any extra funds. Starr is just paying the tax bill sort of due on that as it's added to an employee's paycheck. And so once CARES came into place, we said we only really need this information for those loans which are Parent Plus loans, and that information is kept on the Common Bond side. So we get a file back that still tells us everyone who received the contribution, but we look at specifically those who have a Parent Plus loan, and those are the only ones right now that are being added to the payroll system so that Starr can continue to pay the taxes due on that $125. And of course, the taxes that are due are really about where somebody located. Everyone's subject to federal income tax withholding, but when you're getting into the different states and the localities and the cities, that's where it makes a difference to have that partnership with your payroll team because they're going to be the ones to be able to come back and tell you what the cost of that imputed income is, because it's going to be different where each of your employees live, right? So New York City versus, Florida or Texas, where there are no state income taxes, the numbers are going to be dramatically different, same as Chicago and California. So each of those locations, your imputed income will be different. But again, from now until the end of the year, that imputed income is only on Parent Plus loans. And so we've made sure that our employees are aware of that as well. But as Kate talked about, that Section 127, one of Starr and Common Bond's partnerships has been to work to get this now new piece of regulation to become permanent. So Starr and Common Bond are working with Congress as much as we can to try and get this to be a permanent benefit because this is the most reasonable place to put this, and it would make such a huge difference to so many people across our country, regardless of whatever affiliation you are. Are we talking about dollars and cents and making cash contributions to help everyone from a financial perspective? This would, I think, get more employers on board.
Terrific, thank you. And I know we had a few more questions, and I think you got to most of them. The last one, do we need to include the $5,250 in the pay stub? Figures up anything above that, but nothing under. See that last question?
So Starr adds, our benefit is $2,000 a year. So only for Parent Plus loans, that money is being added to the pay stub. And we don't have anyone right now that is actually doing a combination of tuition reimbursement and the student loan match. If we did, we would manage that piece up to that $5,250, but at this time we don't have anyone who is doing that. So that is something on our radar, and we do track that, again, in partnership with the team that owns tuition reimbursement, because that is not owned under the benefits team. It is owned by Learning and Development. So that's your partnership, again, working with your internal partners to make sure you're both counting the same employees.
And we're about out of time, so I think we hopefully got to most of the questions. I know there were a couple that came in at the end, but thank you, everyone, for your time today. Thank you to Kate and Linda and to everyone that was on the call today. I would like to share just a couple upcoming webcasts from the conference board, so you can see on this slide. Please attend some of our upcoming programming as well. You can click the links here to register. We also have a podcast channel called Insights. So please click that link, conferenceboard.org/podcasts. We post a new episode weekly. We are launching an executive compensation conference series. So many of our conferences have gone virtual this year. So click that link below, ExecComp, to learn more about that event as well. And as a reminder, you will see a pop-up box as soon as you click out of this webcast, and we do ask that you fill out the brief evaluation and share your input on today's program. So thank you for attending, and we hope to see you next time.